So in honor of St. Gregory the Great, we're going to do a little Gregorian chant lesson. I do think on a day like today, when we remember one of the four great doctors of the Western Church, Gregory, I mean, it's good to reflect and see really the impact that he had on the life of the church. Now, for many, it could be the first thing would be what his role in the role of sacred music in the liturgy, and I would dare say that's probably third or fourth on the list, not his greatest achievement. You got to remember when he became Pope in the 6th century, he formed like this bridge. He formed this bridge between the church that existed just like, this was right after, not too long after the church finally, it became legal to practice our faith openly, to actually have places, houses of worship, things like that. Like, this was a new and novel world. We can take so many things for granted today, and so now you're dealing with this church that has been operating in secret under the threat of a sword, and now out in the open, what do you do? How do you, because in those kind of conditions, you're doing the best you can with what you got, right? Your communication is very difficult. This is not the time for a lot of codification, universalization of some basic things and basic behavior, basic, especially liturgical and even basic organizational. So here we have just a century or two out from this moment, and here's Gregory, a man reluctant for leadership, a man who had spent some time in doing works of governance in the Vatican and gave it all up so he can live the monastic life. Founded, I think if I remember reading correctly, almost 6 monasteries. But then when the need came up, he was almost unanimously, reluctantly elected Pope. Those are the kind of people you want there, the ones who don't want the job. They tend not to abuse it too much. And I think he did so much to just pastorally organize this growing body that was spreading around the world, and one of his interests, we failed to too, that one of his interesting contributions was he's the one who sent missionaries first to England to preach the gospel. He helped to bring Christianity to England, to parts of France, pushed them out even further into the known world at that time. He was beginning codification of under book, like using the same books to organize themselves hierarchically, organizationally, liturgically. He thought this was a good thing to do, something that we take for granted today. When we go around the world and we can go into any church around the world, and the same readings are being read. We can know where we are in the place of the Mass very quickly. We have him to thank for the beginning of that. He set the church up so beautifully for the Middle Ages. He was just a hinge character, a hinge figure in the life of the church. So we have so much to thank him for. Praise the Lord, that in his reluctance, he was still able to do what he was being asked, what the Lord was calling him to do. He would, if left to his own devices, he would have been probably happy as a clam, being, as a Benedictine out in the boondocks of the known world of the time, to just pray quietly. But no, the Lord saw he had gifts and wanted to use him. And so the thing maybe today is thinking how significant this great saint had in the life of the church. Think about how significant our contributions could be in the life of the church. We can be sometimes so reluctant to say yes to the Lord. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But you got a gift. But I don't have time. I'd rather. What is the Lord putting on your heart today that you're reluctantly trying to tell him no? Maybe the Lord has something great in store for your contribution. And so just like St. Gregory the Great, we're grateful for, his willingness to say yes despite his reluctance. That he realized, okay, the Lord was more stubborn than he could ever be, and so he gave in. And then look what the Lord did with that, his 3 loaves and 2 fish. How much he multiplied that. And now what we can take for granted now, we have him to thank for it. Who knows, maybe a millennia from now, what history will look back and say, well, thank goodness so-and-so from Parish of the Resurrection of the Lord in Old Town, Maine, in their reluctance still said yes to what the Lord was calling them to do. How different would the church have been if they hadn't said yes to the movement of the Lord? How different would the world have been if Gregory the Great remained in his reluctance and would have stayed in his monastery, quiet, prayerful? How different would the world look? How is the Lord challenging you today with that idea, with that notion? And how is the Lord inviting you to say yes to him, even though you may feel reluctant to do so? And let us have the courage to overcome that reluctance.